So I spoke a little more tonight about the breath in the meditation. And I spoke a little more about the form and formlessness. So I'm still trying to catch a little wind of a talk here. The updraft, so to speak. Sometimes I start to feel it. For some reason, I'm drawn to speaking a little more about the breath. It's so concrete. It's so, in some way, easy to teach about because it's so concrete. Some of the other things I point to are a little more difficult. Because we've been breathing our whole lives, there is a tendency to think we know what the breath is. In a certain way, one breath to another, there isn't a huge difference. Not the sort of difference one's going to sit down and describe eloquently and make it interesting. It's not interesting on that level. And this is the paradox of the breath, is that it's not interesting on the conceptual level because one can't really, come up with some sort of classification of the breath in various breaths that's going to make it all interesting to that conceptual mind. So to the extent that we fall in love with breathing, to the extent that we actually become deeply absorbed in the experience, we have to let go of something that we normally inhabit. We have to let go of what I'm calling the conceptual mind, which is a place of great entertainment. We're constantly entertaining ourselves with our own thoughts. And our thoughts are constantly telling us how to interpret the world and what we need to do and so forth. There's a lot of content there. So the breath is rather austere. And one can give the instruction to notice breathing, be fully in and with the breath. And if one's coming from the conceptual mind, there's a kind of, like, what's going to keep me there more than a second? I got better things to do, says the conceptual mind. So there's a shift. There's a huge shift, I think, actually, in our physiology and in our brain itself when we enter into being fully in the breathing. We have to take it one breath at a time, just this breath now, and just feel it. And there's something, you probably think I exaggerate, there's something delightful in that. Just breathing and just feeling very simple sensations in the chest and the abdomen of just expanding and contracting They're so ordinary. And yet it's as if they contain a little bit of well-being. They're just oozing out. And that would make sense, given that we're beings that have to breathe, that depend on the breath for our survival, that when we can simply breathe, sit and breathe in safety and tranquility, there is something intrinsically enjoyable about that. And if you're able to make that shift, or to the extent you're able to make that shift where you actually can rest in the breathing opens up a bit to be seen with greater complexity. The in-breath is full of different little movements and stages. So is the out-breath. And there's something that kind of goes out to the whole body. I'll call it a radiance, for lack of a better word, a brightening. So the breath is like a doorway to our energy body, which is a subtle body. It isn't felt with any degree of, what should I say, grossness, the way, say, if you touch your fingers together, you feel a really obvious gross sensation. But the breath is like a gateway to our energy body. And part of that gateway is a buoyancy to the body and mind that begins to come with breathing, with aware breathing. A buoyancy. Something uplifting. Something lightening. And here again, there's a paradox. So the wonderful thing about meditation is how it teaches us to let go. Because things don't work right when we grasp. So if you're just breathing and noticing this buoyancy, it's there and it unfolds. If you were trying to do this to get to a certain state, it wouldn't unfold right. Though you might be able, through some kind of yogic self-control, to get to something. It wouldn't be the surrender. It wouldn't be the natural thing, the natural breath, and the natural buoyancy, and the natural, I hate to use the word concentration, but I'll use it. The natural concentration of the mind. And by concentration, that poor word, it so oftentimes means a kind of narrowing down and aiming at just one little point and excluding everything else. You can do that. It has some advantages to do that, doing that. But the natural one I'm talking about is just having one's energies just be settled and whole in breathing and in being content in the breathing. It's another word I'll introduce, content. Being content to breathe. The mind isn't seeking something sexier. The mind isn't seeking something more interesting, something more stimulating. And so here's the paradox is sometimes because the mind is so busy trying to seek stimulation, it can't quite taste what I'm talking about. One has to, in a certain way, have some faith as I talk to just find the enjoyment of one breath and let that be the shift, and then find the enjoyment of another one. And gradually something can attune to this natural, quiet openness beyond thinking. Although thinking doesn't necessarily just completely stop. There's still thoughts that keep arising, but one notices them and comes back. It's not a problem. You don't have to, I'm not talking about some ideal thoughtless state that one has to try to muscle your way into. It isn't that way. It's just the fruit of a progressive letting go and relaxation and enjoyment, all of those. It's interesting because when I teach about this, I feel like I keep repeating myself. And I no doubt am repeating myself over and over about this. And yet it's like the breath. In a funny way, the breath repeats itself over and over and over. And after 40 years of doing mindful breathing and related practices, I'm still not tired of the breath. That's kind of amazing. I'm still not tired of breathing. I guess when I get tired of breathing, that's called death, right? No, just kidding. And I use the word fall in love quite literally. We don't control falling in love. Have you ever noticed that? It just kind of happens. Certainly if you're out there looking for someone to fall in love with, it's more likely to happen. But sometimes you find someone and they seem to be right, but you just don't quite fall, whatever that is, that opening inside oneself. So the breath is a little like that, falling in love with the breath. You can't will it. But if you hang out in its proximity, if you hang out with it in the right spirit, I think it'll happen.